The culture war is, well, boring, really. I used to participate in it. I was naive enough to think that it really mattered, or it had some kind of primacy over what's really important. So I participated in this whole vegan versus carnivore meat eater battle, debate, discussion. But it got to a point where, well, it just felt like I was helping to divide and conquer, right? And I couldn't quite put my finger on it back then, but I felt like it just wasn't it. But, like a lot of people, I suppose, who participate in this culture war, whether it be meat versus veggies or LGBT versus trad or, whatever. I did it because I was personally affected by it, right? There were people in the community who just had these interesting ideas about who we are as human beings and what we should eat. And they were quite militant about it and annoyed the fuck out of me. So I let them have it here online and in real life. But then just got bored with it and came to realize that it's what I said it is. It's divide and conquer, ultimately. Now, I'm not saying that these issues are unimportant, right? What I am saying is that this is how they dupe you, right? It's like, well, it's the left-right paradigm, right? And it's just so frustrating to see so many people who seem to be good people who present themselves as bastions of morality, and they'll tell you what's right and what's wrong and how they try to be the former rather than the latter. But then at the same time, those same people will support degeneracy and that which is so obviously wrong because they've chosen a side, and the side that they've chosen basically just brainwashed them to believe that they're the good side because of these secondary issues, when ultimately they're just using these issues. And, abortion was that to a large degree back in the 90s, at least insofar as I can remember. They've upped the game and added other, facets to it. So it is what it is. But, you have a lot of these so-called conservatives, Christians even, who, religious people who claim to be so, God-like and, well, maybe not exactly that, but virtuous and moral and this and that. And for example, they'll just support genocide, or at the very least won't speak out against it, or they'll completely ignore the issue because on some level they understand that it would expose a certain type of hypocrisy in their ideology, right? So, for example, you got this, well, Brett Cooper woman, I guess, right? And it just caught my attention because of the title of the video, and, it got suggested to me. So anybody who tells you that, they don't want to talk about a certain issue or whatever because, like, their channel will be sanctioned, or, their videos won't get views. Shut up. Shut up. So long as you say what you're supposed to say, which is what you're doing anyway, nothing's going to happen to your channel. This idea that, like, oh, you'll hear this a lot from people who are just fucking grifters, whether they know it or not, however conscious or not that is, they're just grifters because they'll tell you, oh, YouTube doesn't allow blah, 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 which is bullshit. These videos that YouTube supposedly doesn't allow, they're all out there, and some of them get millions of views, right? just like Brett Cooper over here. The reason why some people are hesitant to talk about these things, I believe, some of these issues, is because it would expose them as hypocrites. There's like a fine line they have to walk, and to satisfy, the grift, basically satisfy the biggest number of people, to brainwash you, to sneak in all these ideas. And I'll explain what I mean in just a second. To get you to not abandon the team, basically, right? And a lot of people, when they say YouTube doesn't allow these videos, what they're really saying is that, well, if I talk about this issue and I don't completely fall in line with what I'm supposed to say, they'll demonetize me, right? Basically admitting that they're just grifting. Whether they do it completely consciously or not, that's what they're doing. I'll give you an example. You got ortho bros, right? Who are supposedly so moral. They speak out against degeneracy. The Crucible is, a great example of this. And the Crucible is fucking culture war extraordinaire channel, right? Probably a Fed. Probably. I mean, just fucking look at the content. Analyze what's said, what's being done. And by Fed, I mean, American or Russian, I don't know. Or it's just a grift. Or it's all of the above. I don't know. But I mean, just examine what's happening, right? So that whole, first of all, it's a debate channel, right? So right off the bat, it's like culture war. It's the pinnacle of the culture war, right? Debate, fight. Us versus them. We have to win the culture war. Why? Why don't we talk about like geopolitics, right? That which is, sorry, we live in the global world. That's what takes precedence over everything else. This whole isolationism, me, my country, you're stupid. I'm not saying there's no virtue in that whatsoever, but I mean, it's too late for all of that. It doesn't exist. We live in a global world, globalized society, and we ain't going back. Geopolitics, sorry, is what determines everything else. That's the most important thing. Everything follows from that. I don't like it, but that's what it is. So you have these debate channels, right? Like the Crucible, that rage against degeneracy, right? And talk about all these thoughts and shame all these people that are, immoral and, sexually degenerate and all types of, you know the deal. I ain't got to tell you, right? And then they're like pro-Trump. Now look, I'm not saying that you couldn't support someone who's not 100% virtuous in hopes that they'll do the right thing. You know what I mean? But I mean, look at the guy. You really think Trump's going to do the right thing? Or is he going to do what he's told? Right? So that side of the political aisle, the red side, right? They'll talk about the bagel people. They'll use all types of code not to get their videos demonetized. Right? They'll fight that war. They'll talk about sexual degeneracy and shame all these people and, judge you completely Dismiss everything else you have to say. So long as you're a sexual degenerate, for example, or you're pro-Israel, for example, nothing else matters. You're done, right? You're a piece of shit. You're a terrible person. Maybe there's hope for you. Maybe there's some redemption, possibly. But for the time being, so long as you hold these ideas, you ain't shit. And then they'll support Trump, a complete fucking sexual degenerate from a sexually degenerate family, right? That's fucking a Zionist. Huh? Make that make sense. Right? It doesn't make any sense, obviously. And they won't talk about the attempted, right? I'm not saying it's risen to that level yet, but the attempted genocide of the Ukrainian people by Putin, right? Because that would expose them for the clowns that they are. They'll avoid that, right? They'll avoid talking about geopolitics because, YouTube doesn't allow it. There's all types of pro-Russia views and pro-Ukrainian views, and these videos are getting, millions of views sometimes. So no, it's a lie to say that YouTube doesn't allow it. You might get your video demonetized if you step out of bounds. That's why they don't want to touch the shit. And also because it would expose them to criticism. It would expose them for the hypocrites that they are. And or the grift that they're running on you. So like Brett Cooper over here, right? Which, I mean, that's a fucking... I'm halfway serious, right? But is she? It looks like a clone of Ben Shapiro, right? I don't know how much Adderall this chick has been on her entire life, but hey, maybe it's just copious amounts of caffeine, but she's like the female, we'll give her that for now, version of Ben Shapiro, right? But I guess that's what, I mean, it even looks like Ben. It's incredible. But she caught my attention because of that video, He's a Man, about that Algerian boxer who obviously was a man. Like, anyone with eyes saw that and could tell that he was. But then with a name like Brett TT from, UCLA and University of Berkeley, I mean, she's coming into the right with the wrong types of ideas. I mean, the political spectrum is so fucked up right now. It's all, the Republicans are acting like Democrats from 10 years ago, you know what I mean? The Democrats are switching sides and becoming Republicans because of how much the Overton window has shifted. And ultimately, at the end of the day, everyone's a fucking leftist anyway. Freedom all of a sudden is unimportant to a lot of these people, or it's just used as a way to get people on your side when you don't actually mean it, right? Human rights don't exist all of a sudden. We don't have any rights. We only have duties. Like, it's just the dumbest shit I've ever heard. It's so dumb. They're the same thing. Anyway, like this chick, right, will make a video about turkeys getting sexually abused at these CAFOs, right? And how that's obviously wrong. And then she'll tell you to go support local farmers, right? So like a good message, something I definitely agree with, and something that's in line with the culture war that I participated in at one point. Meat versus veg, right? And well, she seems to genuinely care for animal welfare, which is, you know, it's fine. But then ask her about Gaza, right? And it's like this wishy-washy, non-committal kind of whatever, right? So Turkey's getting fingered by some scumbags. And, you know, it's not a widespread phenomenon. It's just these little isolated cases that Peter likes to blow the fuck out of proportion. And just because you got a family farm, that doesn't mean that your retarded cousin ain't humping the fucking goat. You know what I mean? Shit happens. But overall, I support that message, right? But at the end of the day, she's more concerned about people fingering a turkey or two than 20,000 or whatever it is by now, children being murdered by Israel. Clearly an attempted genocide. Well, is it going to meet all the, you know, criteria or whatever? I don't give a fuck. To be legally considered that, that's the goal, right? Let that fucking sink in. A couple of turkeys getting fingered by some scumbags and a couple of CAFOs in the United States seem to mean more to her than thousands of innocent children dying. And there's some innocent adults too, don't get me wrong. But I mean, a lot of them do deserve this shit. They do. It is what it is. Because they support evil. So fuck them. But children? And, you know, you'll have, again, these so-called right-wingers that are so anti-degeneracy and so moral, supposedly, coming down on these thoughts, right? But I guess Melania and Ivanka, I guess they're cool. Trump, who's an absolute sexual degenerate, right? A felon. He's cool. What? You know, we're anti-Zog, but Trump's cool. What? Well, ridicule, you know, Roman Catholics, will go to war with them, for example, even though they're probably the closest allies insofar as, you know, different denomination, whatever the fuck you want to call it. The original Orthodox Church, right? But Trump, who's not even a religious man, he's probably as secular as they come. And I think he's a Protestant, which is, you know, basically Jewish, right? Or like the synthesis of Judeo, it's like the epitome of Judeo-Christian, whatever the fuck that means, right? He's cool. Yeah. We're anti some Coomer gremlin banging some grifter right-wing Lauren Southern, right? And we'll talk about how evil and terrible and degenerate that is. But we won't even touch fucking Putin putting, you know, hundreds of thousands of Russians and Ukrainians to death, and his army doing all kinds of nasty shit in Ukraine to women and children, right? The worst types of, you know what I'm talking about, right? We won't even touch that. But a couple of Coomer gremlins, you know, doing something of their own volition that we just find dirty. Oh, well, that's the most important thing we need to be talking about, right? Not another attempted genocide. Oh, but, you know, how do we justify that? Well, it's, you know, those people over there, they're Nazis, they're evil, they're like the, whatever that biblical story is of the men. Malak? I forget the name. Some of you know what I'm talking about, right? The people that God put to death because they were degenerate, right? Well, it's because they're Nazis. It's because they killed, you know, defending themselves. It's because they killed 3,000 Russian soldiers. Poor Russians. Right? How many Russian soldiers has Putin killed? You don't give a fuck about Russian people, soldiers. Shut up. Stop lying. You don't give a fuck. It's just like, it's so mind-blowing to me how you could be anti-degeneracy and anti-Zionism and then support a Trump. Right? How you could be anti-degeneracy but then completely ignore, right? Because YouTube doesn't allow me to go. Shut the fuck up. Completely and utterly ignore two Russian or Orthodox nations, right? I guess Ukrainians used to be Russian Orthodox, or it was one in the same church at one point. Fucking murdering one another left and right. The Russian Orthodox Church just promoting genocide to their congregation, blessing Putin's hypersonic penis. I mean, this is just fucking retarded. You know, we'll criticize all these other faiths, religious people, different religions, but like we won't look within and see what it is that our church is doing to itself, basically, right? We're cool with that. We won't even touch that. Yeah, because that's a difficult fucking subject. There's no way out of it. And it's not because YouTube doesn't allow talking about this shit. It's because it would expose a certain hypocrisy. It might hurt the grift a little bit. And maybe, probably, because your overlords told you not to talk about this shit. That's not your job. Right? Your job is to promote the culture war. Divide and conquer. Don't look at the big issues, what's really important. Right? Because at the end of the day, if someone like Putin, people like him, are allowed to, for example, and this isn't me saying that the West is without sin at all, right? But let's keep it real, you know what I mean? Let's keep it real. What's worse? I don't know, a few million gay dudes doing what it is they do to each other of their own volition, right? And everything else that comes with that. Or when it's all said and done, at the end of the day, millions of people getting murdered, raped, countries' infrastructure absolutely destroyed, right? I mean, talk about degeneracy. Like, what's worse? All the evils of LGBT, so long as it has existed, doesn't even add up to the evils that Putin had done in the last 3 years. And this is just the beginning. Look at the evils that Russia, USSR, whatever the fuck you want to call it, same shit, has bestowed upon the world. How many people they've murdered and the things that they've done to their own people, for example. They're still doing to their own people. You want to talk to me about some gays poking each other in the ass? Yeah, okay, cool. I mean, that doesn't even compare to what that sexual degenerate Putin is doing. But this is the grift, right? This is the Psyop. This is the game. We have these politicians who will get your vote by, choosing a side. And look at how in flux everything is, right? People are switching sides all the time. They'll pick a side insofar as the culture war, right? They'll say, oh, I'm anti-LGBTQ. Someone like Elon Musk or Trump, for example, right? They're anti-woke, supposedly. So they get your support, they get your vote. But then they sneak in all these other ideas that are just as woke, right? Like microchips in your brain. I mean, you want to talk about, it's not exactly gender fluidity, but like ultimate fluidity. Look at what Elon Musk is like naming his children, for example. I mean, that guy's like, forget about sex change. That guy is like on a whole nother level. That guy is like future woke. But he's somehow right wing conservative. What? You got these Zionist shills choosing the right side, right? A Psyop they probably played a part in creating in the first place, right? So they'll stroke your ego with this like, I'm anti-degeneracy, anti-LGBTQ, anti all these things, vote for us, right? Click on our videos, support us, support the politicians we tell you to support, and let's go genocide all those motherfuckers over there while we're at it, right? Let's go destroy everything that they've built, because that's not degenerate at all. These culture wars and I'm not saying these aren't important issues. What I am saying is that if you keep supporting these people that are basically just lying to you just to get your vote without calling them out on their hypocrisy, without keeping it 100 all the time, at the end of the day, you're going to get fucked. Because they're all, however you imagine it is they want the world to be, right? Whether it's we're eating bugs or we get to eat meat or it's just processed, grain, however you imagine whatever this world is that you think they want for us at the end of the day, insofar as our diet or sexual orientation, what we wear, blah, blah, right? It could go whichever way. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's them, whether they're right or left, as our overlords, telling us what we're supposed to do, not giving us a choice, taking away our freedom, liberty. You got these jokers running around saying that liberty is a sin. It's like the liberal world order is no. You need a slave master. And this isn't me saying that there's no problems with the West or the liberal world order, right? But there's one thing that it has over all these other degenerate worldviews, political systems, empires, like Russia, right? At the very least, the liberal fucking world order is giving you a choice, right? Free will. the ability to exercise your free will. Okay. I don't know, man. It's just so frustrating, and also because I participated in this shit. Not realizing how, yeah, maybe there's a benefit to eating bugs. There's definitely a financial benefit to these corporations. And hey, if they can make this shit delicious and it helps to, protect the environment in some way, and it's nutritious food, right? I mean, plenty of people throughout ages have eaten bugs. You know what I mean? Maybe that's cool. And it will be cool, right? It'll be totally cool. So long as we have a choice to eat something else. And I would much rather live in a world where there's all kinds of degeneracy, because you're never going to do away with all of that. There's all types of degeneracy, right? But you can choose whatever you want. versus this supposed virtuous world where there's only meat and there's only hetero people and there's only nuclear families, and you could only do what they tell you to and you don't have a fucking choice. Because how the fuck would you know who's good and who's evil? You couldn't even tell. Because nobody would be given the choice to be themselves, to exercise their free will. Because everyone would be a fucking slave. Anyway, I'm sick and tired of this bullshit. That's why I had to stop doing it a long time ago, because I realized that all this is divide and conquer with these secondary issues that ultimately nobody really gets right at the end of the day. No one really knows where this is headed. And all these issues are just used to divide people and to sneak in, get you to buy their geopolitical agenda, which ultimately enslaves and genocides whole groups of people because of, and the justification is, oh, it's because they believe, it's because they're degenerate, right? We need to murder all of them because they're the degenerates, right? They're the evil ones, so we need to murder them. Get the fuck out of here, man. At the end of the day, this cultural war is what your overlords, who don't agree on everything, obviously, who want the whole world for themselves, they're just using these secondary issues to brainwash you and take away your freedom to be able to choose to be a degenerate or not. It's lame. And it's very, very easy to expose the hypocrisy of all these fucking grifters, feds, Russian assets, and just fucking clowns, man. A bunch of fucking clowns. Give me a break.